Iran reacted furiously in the Gulf of Oman and seized the Chuan, a Honduran-flagged ship identified by maritime consultancies as a floating arsenal linked to the maritime security network and run by Chinese operators, loaded to store weapons and equipment used by private teams that protect commercial vessels. This Friday, May 15, 2026, the case landed like a political bombshell. Because the seizure happened about 38 nautical miles from Fujairah in the United Arab Emirates, near the entrance to the Strait of Hormuz, while Trump was pressuring Beijing not to provide military support to the Iranian regime. Unauthorized men boarded the vessel while it was anchored, turned off normal maritime tracking, and took the ship toward Iranian waters, with no confirmed deaths so far. The takeaway is grim. Tehran did not act as a collective force, but as a cornered regime trying to gain an advantage at sea after losing ground at the negotiating table and on the military front. Now, the theft of this Chinese arsenal gives Trump a strong argument to increase naval pressure, demand explanations from China, and treat the Revolutionary Guard as a direct threat to international navigation. I'll tell you all about it in a moment, but right now you'll want to be subscribed to the channel to stay well informed. Real-time information with the best journalistic quality you've ever seen. In the standard of credibility, Milson Alves, the operation was not treated as a routine seizure. The ship was not an oil tanker, it wasn't carrying passengers, and it wasn't operating as a normal commercial cargo vessel. It served as a maritime depot for weapons for private security teams, a type of structure used by companies that protect merchant ships against attacks at sea. The problem is that, in the midst of the Gulf crisis, this type of vessel becomes a target that can't be ignored. When men linked to Iran seize a ship of this size, the immediate interpretation is that Tehran sought to strengthen its own ability to exert pressure at sea without having to openly announce an arms purchase. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard appears as the central name in this operation. Maritime News reported that the vessel was seized by unauthorized personnel about 38 nautical miles northeast of Fujairah, a strategic area, because it is close to the eastern entrance of the Strait of Hormuz. After the boarding, the tracking signal disappeared and contact with the ship was lost. This detail raised an alert. When a vessel disappears from the identification system and heads into Iranian waters, the chance of independent inspection drops and the real contents on board come under Tehran's control. The point that makes everything explosive is the Chinese connection mentioned in the news. The vessel appears in reports as being operated by or associated with structures linked to Chinese maritime security companies. This raised serious suspicion. China was saying diplomatically that it wanted the Strait of Hormuz open and free from Iranian military control, while an arsenal linked to China's maritime network ended up being captured by Iran. The fact by itself already casts a shadow over Beijing, because Tehran gained access to a sensitive ship at the most convenient moment for Trump. In Beijing, it had already been said that Xi Jinping agreed that Iran could not have nuclear weapons and that the Strait of Hormuz needed to be reopened. The American president also stated that Xi promised not to send military equipment to Iran. That's where the Chuan episode becomes politically toxic. If China promised not to arm Tehran, and soon after a ship described as a floating arsenal was taken to Iranian waters, it gains political ammunition to say that China's strategy needs to be closely watched. Iran did this because it is trying to regain leverage after weeks of blockade, attacks, and military attrition. There is no public confirmation of deaths in the capture of Chuan. What is known is that the ship was boarded, taken toward Iran, and lost contact. In another nearby incident, an Indian vessel called Haji Ali was attacked in Omani waters, caught fire, and sank. In this case, Indian authorities reported that the 14 crew members were safely rescued by the Omani Coast Guard. That is, so far, in these two cases mentioned amid the same maritime crisis, what has been confirmed is severe material damage, a direct risk to navigation, and no confirmed deaths on the Haji Ali. What the crew members and operators were doing there is an important part of the story. In the case of the Chuan, the ship was anchored and served as maritime security support, holding weapons and equipment for private protection missions. These vessels exist because many coastal nations have complicated rules about bringing weapons into their ports. To avoid seizures on land, companies leave weapons at sea, on floating armories. But this solution, in a gulf filled with tension, has become a trap. Iran found exactly the kind of target it could turn into a military advantage and political propaganda. The American response had already been prepared even before this seizure. Admiral Brad Cooper, head of the United States Central Command, told Congress that Operation Epic Fury has severely degraded Iran's missile, drone, and naval sector capabilities. Even so, Cooper acknowledged that Iran still retains the means to threaten ships and maintain fear in the region. The United States does not need to sell the idea of a new war. The justification is already being set up on the ground to protect navigation, prevent Iran from exacting a toll, avoid sea mines, and stop the Revolutionary Guard from turning commercial ships into hostages. Cooper himself had already said that American forces took risks to open passage in the Strait of Hormuz, using destroyers with missile defense and more than 100 aircraft, unmanned platforms, and 15,000 military personnel to protect commercial ships. The seizure of the floating arsenal also weakens the Iranian narrative that Tehran only reacts to external aggression. When an armed force boards a ship anchored near the United Arab Emirates and takes it to Iranian waters, the image that remains is one of state piracy with political calculation. Iran wanted to show strength, but it ended up exposing exactly the kind of behavior that helps Trump argue for a tougher response in the Gulf. Now, what happens next depends on three moves. Washington should use the case to increase patrols, monitor suspicious vessels, and pressure allies to treat the Revolutionary Guard as a direct threat to navigation. China will be held politically accountable because Trump may demand that Beijing prove in practice that it is not facilitating indirect military support to Tehran. Iran should try to turn the seized ship into leverage, either to bolster its own stockpiles or to show that it can still upend the maritime chessboard. The crisis has reached this point because Tehran realized it had lost military ground and sought a quick victory at sea. But the theft of the Chinese arsenal has created a dangerous opening. Instead of appearing strong, Iran started to look desperate for weapons, for leverage, and for an image of control. I'm Milson Alvis, an international relations analyst, and my goal is to keep you well informed with the truth every day. The news links are in the video description. Leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, and at the end, take a look at the comments so you can be even more engaged with the Milson Alves community.